Ever started a project with explosive enthusiasm only to abandon it halfway through when something shinier caught your attention? If you're an INTP, this cycle probably feels painfully familiar. You're bursting with ideas, diving into new interests with the intensity of a supernova, and then, just as suddenly, the spark fizzles out. So, what's really going on behind this classic INTP pattern? Let's break it down. Number 1. Their brain is a browser with 47 open tabs. INTPs operate like a web browser that's been running for 3 weeks straight with dozens of tabs open simultaneously. Each tab represents a different idea, theory, or project, and they're all running at once, demanding attention, consuming mental energy. The problem? While most people can focus on one thing at a time, the INTP brain doesn't work that way. They're simultaneously thinking about quantum physics, planning a novel, researching ancient philosophy, and wondering if they could build a better mousetrap, all while supposedly working at that one project they promised to finish. This mental multitasking isn't intentional chaos, it's just how their minds naturally work. They make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, jumping from idea to idea like intellectual parkour. But here's the catch: when everything is interesting, nothing gets prioritized. That half-finished coding project, still sitting there, the novel outline collecting digital dust. Their minds are constantly seeking novelty, new patterns, fresh puzzles to solve. And once they've mentally solved something once, they understand the core concept or see how it works, the motivation to actually finish it evaporates. The intellectual challenge is gone, and with it the drive. Number 2. The thrill is in the theory, not the execution. For INTPs, the real magic happens in the conceptual phase. Planning, theorizing, designing systems in their heads, that's where they come alive. It's like watching a mental fireworks display, brilliant, explosive, and endlessly fascinating. But then comes the execution phase, the actual doing, the tedious, repetitive work of bringing that beautiful theory into reality. And suddenly it feels like trudging through mud wearing concrete shoes. It's not laziness, it's their brains are wired for exploration and analysis, not for following through on routine tasks. Once they've figured out how something works or mapped out the solution, their brain basically says, "Cool, we're done here. Next puzzle, please." This means they often have dozens of half-completed projects scattered across their lives like intellectual breadcrumbs. Each one represents a moment of brilliance, a spark of inspiration, but rarely the grinding patience needed to see it through to the finish line. The planning stage offers infinite possibilities and zero constraints, but execution, that requires choosing one path, committing to it, and accepting limitations. For an INTP, that can feel almost suffocating. Number 3. Perfectionism disguised as research. INTPs have a sneaky form of perfectionism that doesn't look like the typical obsessive polishing. Instead, it manifests as endless research, constant refinement of ideas, and perpetual optimization before they even start. They'll spend weeks researching the perfect method, reading every article, watching every tutorial, and analyzing every possible approach. Why? Because they want to do it right. They want to understand the complete picture before committing, and there's always one more thing to learn, one more angle to consider. This turns into a clever form of procrastination dressed up as productivity. They're not avoiding the work, they're preparing for it indefinitely. The project never gets finished because it never really gets started beyond the planning phase. And deep down, there's a fear lurking beneath all of this research. The fear that their execution won't match their vision. As long as the project stays in their head, it remains perfect. The moment they start building it, in reality, it becomes flawed, limited, human. And that's a hard pill for an INTP to swallow. Number 4. New ideas are more exciting than old ones. The INTP relationship with projects is like a serial dater who's constantly enchanted by the new person, but loses interest once the honeymoon phase ends. That new idea? It's intoxicating, full of potential, unexplored territory. The old project already figured out, familiar, predictable. Their brains are wired to chase novelty and intellectual stimulation. When a fresh idea appears, especially one that connects multiple interests or opens a new rabbit hole, it's almost impossible to resist. The dopamine hit from exploring something new far outweighs the satisfaction of finishing something old. This creates a graveyard of abandoned projects, each one a monument to a moment of inspiration that couldn't compete with the next shiny thing. It's not that they don't care about finishing, it's that their brain keeps serving up new puzzles that feel more urgent, more interesting, more worthy of their mental energy. And here's the kicker, they genuinely believe they'll come back to those old projects. I'll finish it later, they tell themselves, but later rarely comes because there's always another now that's more compelling. Number 5, the pressure of deadlines kills their creativity. Unlike some personality types that thrive under pressure, INTPs often wilt when external deadlines loom. That ticking clock doesn't motivate them, it suffocates their creative process. INTPs need freedom to explore, to follow tangents, to let their thoughts wander down unexpected paths. Deadlines impose structure and urgency that clash with their natural rhythm. Suddenly, the project that was fun and exploratory becomes a source of stress and obligation. When they feel pressured, their brain goes into resistance mode. What was once an exciting intellectual adventure now feels like forced labor. The joy drains out, replaced by anxiety and resentment. And when an INTP loses their intrinsic motivation, getting them to finish becomes nearly impossible. Ironically, they might scramble to complete something at the very last minute, not because the deadline motivated them, but because the panic finally overrides their resistance. But this isn't productivity, it's survival mode. And the result is rarely their best work. Number 6, they're solving problems that don't need solutions yet. INTPs have this fascinating habit of solving theoretical problems that may never actually materialize. They'll spend hours designing a system for organizing their files, creating the perfect productivity workflow, or planning a project down to the smallest detail, and then never actually use any of it. Why? Because the problem solving itself is the reward. Their brains are satisfaction engines fueled by puzzles and complexity. It doesn't matter if the solution is practical or necessary. What matters is the intellectual exercise. This means they often invest tremendous mental energy into things that don't move them closer to finishing their actual goals. They're optimizing systems they haven't built yet, planning for scenarios that may never happen, and solving problems that only exist in their imagination. And when they finally sit down to work on the real project, they're mentally exhausted from all that theoretical gymnastics. The actual work feels mundane in comparison to the elaborate mental models they constructed. Number 7, finishing means letting go, and that's hard. Here's the truth about most INTPs, they don't like to admit it. Finishing something means accepting that it's done, imperfect, and out of their hands. It means closing a door of infinite possibilities and saying, this is it. For a personality type that lives in the realm of potential and theoretical perfection, that finality is genuinely difficult. As long as a project is unfinished, it can still become anything. It holds infinite potential, but the moment they declare it complete, it becomes fixed, limited, real, and inevitably flawed. There's also a subtle identity crisis wrapped up in completion. INTPs often define themselves by their ideas and projects. Finishing means moving on, and moving on means losing a part of themselves that was woven into the work. So they hold on, tinkering endlessly, almost done for months or years, unable to release it into the world. Not because they're incapable, but because letting go means confronting the gap between their vision and reality. And that gap can feel like failure, even when it's not. The unfinished project remains a comforting companion, a familiar landscape of possibility. Finishing it, that's the real challenge, not for lack of skill, but for an abundance of imagination that refuses to be contained by something as final as done. These videos will be really helpful for you.